Hello, salam, and welcome to my channel, What the Patriarchy, where we are working to completely dismantle, destroy, uproot the patriarchy, one Muslim feminist issue at a time, or currently one chapter of a Muslim feminist book at a time. This is Dr. Shahnaz Aqani. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we continue our summary of Dr. Kecia Ali's book, Sexual Ethics and Islam, now at chapter 8. This wonderful book right here that I highly recommend. It is a 2016 edition, the second edition that we're working with, and that is the one that I recommend. The chapter is called The Prophet Muhammad, His Beloved Aisha, and Modern Muslim Sensibilities. Its sections, the different sections of this chapter are Apologetics and Polemics, Searching for Solace, Conclusion, and a Coda. You see, according to hadiths, or according to one hadith, Aisha was 6 years old when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, married her, and 9 at the time of consummation, at the time that the marriage was consummated. So Muslims are faced with the challenge of having to reconcile this incident with their discomfort of it. It's tricky, to quote the author, for Muslims to simultaneously believe that Muhammad is a role model for Muslims, for all times, but also believe that today's Muslims cannot marry 9-year-olds or 6-year-olds. And so Muslims have responded to this dilemma in various ways, including by insisting that Aisha, was actually in her teens when the consummation occurred. This chapter highlights what Aisha's marriage reveals about Muslims' own anxieties around gender, marriage, and sexual ethics more generally. So the different things that Muslims highlight or prioritize from this episode in Muhammad's life tell us what is important to Muslims or unimportant to Muslims at any given time that they are expressing their opinions on this very controversial marriage, something that we're embarrassed about, something that we're proud of, something that we're neutral toward, and so on. You see, one of the biggest obstacles to efforts to increase the minimum age for marriage in some Muslim countries and in many Muslims' minds is Aisha's marriage to the Prophet Muhammad. And so that is why this topic matters. What we say about this marriage, how old we believe that she was at the time that Muhammad married her, has actual consequences, legal consequences, practical consequences, and sometimes violent. If you believe that this episode in Muhammad's life means that we must support child marriage at all times, that it's sunnah to marry that young. A lot of issues emerge here because we have to think about what Muhammad's actions here mean regarding his marriage to Aisha, depending on how old she was. So can we say, for example, that we can do it just because he did it and he is our role model for all times? Can we say that he was wrong to do so if she was a child? If he was right to do it, then why can we not do it today? Again, Muslims have responded to this issue very, very differently at different times in history. Some Muslim groups completely deny that she was 9 years old at the time of marriage, like Ahmadi Muslims or Quran-only Muslims. Some Muslims find all hadiths to be problematic, unreliable, a very unreliable source of Islam, and therefore this hadith is no problem because it never happened. Others believe that this specific hadith is fake and unreliable, but not necessarily all of the hadiths, not necessarily the entire hadith tradition. For some, just the narrator of this hadith is unreliable, and therefore the hadith is unreliable. For others, the hadith is not reliable because it contradicts other reports in which Aisha's age or date of birth is mentioned based on accounts telling us when a particular event occurred. The argument in this latter case goes that a report might say that she was X many years old when thing Y happened, and so we do the math, and it turns out that she can't possibly have been 6 at the time of the marriage. Some Muslims even claim that there are reports in which her age ranges from 9 to 24 at the time of consummation. And of course, there's also a very special kind of Muslims amongst us who think that her having been a child at the time of marriage was a special thing. Her having been Muhammad's only virgin wife was a mark of distinction, they claim. Okay, ew. Virginity at the time of marriage was historically a mark of distinction, a mark of honor for women because patriarchy. And too many people, even today, still think that a woman is worthless if she is not a virgin at the time of her marriage. Even today. Some Muslims even try to validate the hadith and Aisha's age as 6 at the time of marriage by claiming that the marriage was divinely approved because, did you know, the angel Gabriel presented the Prophet Muhammad with an image of Aisha telling him that she will be his wife. I know, it's disgusting. Or they say that Muhammad married her because it served a political purpose, or she needed to be so young so that she could live a long, long life after Muhammad's death and serve as an authority on all things Islam, on the Prophet Muhammad's life including, or on hadith. Funny story though, it turns out that you don't have to be little to be an authority on hadith, because did you know that the person with the most hadiths in the Sunni tradition is Abu Hurairah, who knew the Prophet for 5 years maximum, and was actually quite unreliable, and not to mention terribly misogynistic. Don't trust him. Oh, and my personal favorite, or I guess one of them, because I have so many favorites here in this topic, and this isn't pointed out in the book, since Aisha was the only virgin wife that the Prophet Muhammad had, Muslims needed to know that they too could marry virgin wives. Because, apparently Muslim men wouldn't know that they too could marry virgins unless Muhammad did it. What the hell? And apparently, if you're a Muslim and reject the idea that Aisha would have been 9 at the time of consummation, then some Muslims accuse you of having been fooled by Western feminist agendas regarding women's liberation, because as one misogynist preacher puts it, if Aisha herself didn't have an issue with it, why do you? Dude, oh my God, please read. Basically, this issue troubles contemporary Muslims, and they have responded to it in all kinds of ways, including accepting it unequivocally and mocking those who do think that the hadith is probably fake, and those who reject it unequivocally, and those in between. So it turns out that it's just today that we're concerned with this issue as an ethical issue. It's just today that we have very strong negative reactions to Muhammad's marriage to Aisha if she was 6 or 9 years old at the time of marriage or consummation. Medieval Muslim scholars for sure had no issues with this hadith or with her having been a child at the time of marriage. And quite frankly, neither did Western non-Muslim writers until just the 20th century or so. The conversation on Aisha's age is exacerbated by the presence of Islamophobia and is often a part of discussion led by Muslims responding to quote-unquote misconceptions about Islam that non-Muslims in the West hold. Oh, by the way, this was a part of my research for my dissertation, and some really, really cool stuff was discovered by me during that research phase, and you should totally read my dissertation or the book based on it coming soon, inshallah. Also, Muslims assume that the consummation would have happened only after Aisha reached puberty, but Ali points out that there's no evidence of that claim. We don't know for sure that consummation happened necessarily after puberty. The author reminds us that we must be careful not to judge the past using contemporary standards, but she also says that just because we can't do that doesn't mean that we should withhold all judgment. For example, just because it is socially acceptable to do something in one time period doesn't mean that it's good, like slavery and clearly child marriage. And that if we become too consumed with challenging negative portrayals of Islam, then we end up excusing all kinds of injustices that do occur. But Ali recognizes that this means we have to first define justice and injustice, good and bad, acceptable and unacceptable. Is something good just because God says it is? Like in Quranic verse 30:21, chapter 30 and verse 21, in which God says that in Muhammad we find a beautiful example. In which case, what happens when something considered good clashes with one's own idea of what is good and appropriate and moral and acceptable and so on. The coda to this chapter is really excellent, pointing out what the original chapter in the first edition was missing and then correcting it in this new edition. So the author points out, for example, that she didn't realize at the time of writing this chapter how recent this debate on Aisha's age was. Medieval Christian critics of Islam actually never had any issues with Aisha's age as 9, or with Muhammad's multiple wives or polygamy, or with Muslim women's rights in general. Christian critics of Islam have defined the word oppression in different ways at different times. Only in the late 20th and 21st centuries do we begin to see Aisha's age emerging as a problem. For the author, age was not always intended to be taken literally. So, for example, when the reports tell us that Khadija was 40 at the time of her marriage to Muhammad while he was 25, it doesn't necessarily mean that she was indeed 40 years old, but that she was a grown woman, an adult, mature, and all. A side note here, the author believes that Khadija's age is probably not really 40 because it would have been quite miraculous for her to give birth to 4, 5, 6 children given her age. Ironically, for European non-Muslim authors and critics of Islam, Khadija's age of 40, which they did take literally like many Muslims do, meant that she was not sexually appealing. And so Muslims, of course, respond with, aha, but that just means that Muhammad wasn't motivated by lustfulness. For the author, the answer to the question of how old was Aisha when Muhammad married her is, we have no idea. We don't know, and we'll never know. Ali states that it is very possible that Aisha's youth was exaggerated in the tradition, especially in the Sunni tradition, to emphasize her claims of purity, which was viewed as one of her merits in the Sunni sources. And then finally, I love this point, we must be careful not to attribute child marriage to ahistorical, honor-bound Islamic patriarchy when such a practice involves so many factors like poverty and war. That's all for now, folks. Thank you so much for watching. We will be back with chapter 9, which is the conclusion of this book soon, inshallah. Salam.